Hello today and welcome. My name is Charles Nordine and I'm from Collective Intelligence. And today we're bringing you a presentation on the Microsoft Power Platform. The theme of our presentation is anticipation or reaction. We think the Microsoft Power Platform can help your organization avoid day-to-day emergencies and improve the overall team productivity. So Collective Intelligence was founded over 20 years ago, and we've always been focused on emerging IT technology trends and helping them, bringing those technology trends to your business to solve its urgent needs. Our main focuses these days are data analytics, helping customers plan and implement cloud migration strategies, as well as conduct and establish enterprise collaboration best practices. We've got experience in all kinds of industries, such as healthcare, state and local, federal. We're primarily in Pennsylvania. Manufacturing, financial services, education. So I'm Charles Nordine. I've been in the IT industry for over 23 years now. My career spanned several different types of technologies. I started out as a Java developer. In fact, I first came to work at Collective Intelligence when I graduated from college. From there, I left there and went to Tyco Electronics. I was there as a offshore development manager and helped bring IT transformation projects in the development space to Tyco Electronics. For the 7 years previous to coming back here, I was at FIA as a capability manager. We helped companies, we helped FIA at that point do a number of digital transformations, including a mobile transformation, identity access management transformation, and helped them migrate to the AWS cloud. And since I've been back at Collective Intelligence, we've been focused on different sorts of automation technologies, such as the Microsoft Power Platform, as well as cloud. So the agenda for today, we're going to go over the changing business environment and the number of things that are, people are dealing with day to day, how the competitive advantage of Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform can ail some of the problems that many teams are having right now, ways that can improve efficiency. We're going to bring in Richard Karat, one of my partners here at Collective Intelligence, and he's going to go over a demo of the different features of the Power Platform and something that we had implemented with one of our customers. And we've got 4 overall use cases that we're going to go over about how we've helped customers improve their productivity and solve some of their issues with the platform. And I have Q&A. We did this presentation live about a week ago. Put your questions in the chat window or in the YouTube window. So let me start off with a question here. Do any of these problems sound familiar? Have you been, gotten these last minute requests like, hey, we need some sales trend data, or need to find out how production's going, or supply chain, and you're pulling together information from all these disparate sources to try to get this last minute answer. It's not automated or approved. Or you're combing through ad hoc reports or SaaS jobs in order to pull together some kind of spreadsheet to answer a leadership question last minute. And just in general, finding information, it seems very hard these days. Like I've got to search through emails or old Excel files. I'm going into OneDrive, or I'm pulling data out of old chats just to find this one key piece of information. And how about these sort of swivel chair exercises that nearly everyone's doing these days? There's a particular system and you can pull data out of that system and it's in a particular format. And then when you want to collate that against another system or look data up against it, another system, you've got to transform it or pull those two pieces together and near the glue. Another trend we're seeing is, or at least I've seen, is this behavior of SWAT teams. Like, hey, we're going to pull together this cross-functional team to solve this one-time problem. We got someone from sales, someone from procurement, someone from the business. We put them in a room and they're going to hash out this problem. And this one-time problem seems to occur every quarter or every year, and there's no automated process to solve that issue. And the people that need to solve it don't communicate normally on a day-to-day basis. We've also seen with this great reshuffling of the workforce. So we have these like IT individuals who have been there, some of the survivors, and they're, always someone good in the organization. They seem to have this line of people behind them waiting for them to answer this key, pull some key information out of their brains in order to answer a question. And because they have they're one of the few people left with these institutional knowledges. They're highly available, and we're just waiting for that person. And we've all noticed that the digital transformations were greatly accelerated after the pandemic. But with what we noticed is some of the legacy systems were ignored during this period, or the digital transformation got 70 to 90% done. And what a lot of teams are seeing is there's a backlog of technical debt that is backed up, and the business is waiting on these IT teams to resolve these issues, both with the legacy system and with finishing the digital transformation. And really, with 40 plus years of these IT technology tools, it seems to me that we're all busier than ever. So what if there was a better way? And we just talked about the technical debt issue. What if your business unit was completely empowered? They had all the necessary data. They had the correct security so that the overall business could be confident they could do their jobs and there were no security issues. That they had the correct knowledge in their heads or the ability to get right to that knowledge to make the critical business decisions that they need to make. And the correct technologies were right there embedded in their business unit. There's a trend that we're starting to see with these with technical debt, and some of this work is moving out of the siloed IT organization and into other facets of the business. One of the reasons is the workforce is turning over. We're going from a baby boomer generation to Gen Z, the millennials and Gen X. They're more technical, and in many cases, they're able to handle more responsibility from a technology standpoint. And we talked about data. Instead of a world where we're having to do ad hoc reporting or pull together last minute SaaS jobs or comb through historical information and pull things together out of Excel, what if you had all this information organized and right there at your fingertips, easily searchable, easily accessible? And instead of SWAT teams, where we're doing manual processing or solving a problem that's an emergency, whether these cross-functional issues, what if we had an automated process that got the information to flow correctly from one silo to another and brought these teams together so they had the correct visibility and knowledge to solve the issues at hand? And we've seen this trend over the last 10 years, and it's happening more and more. People are moving away from these long investment cycles of a waterfall process and moving more towards these agile, rapid development, seeing the value at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end instead of the requirements, design, testing, deployment kind of model. And so we're talking about, those are just some of the challenges we're having. We know that business is also already always changing. We've had a pandemic. There's war in Ukraine currently. There's been supply chain upset. AI and automation are on everyone's lips and ears right now. I feel like there's been this threat of recession for the last 5 years. So we're always having to keep up with this business change and get ahead of these problems. So overall, we think there's a better way. So just to give you an idea of collective intelligence, we're also evolving. So at the inception, when I first came to work here in 2000, we were doing custom development, helping shops would do custom development, build portals. And from there, that custom development paradigm, I think, is going away. And we're moving more towards, our company's already moved towards more power platform or automated technology where a lot of these problems are solved for you with the platform. We've always been a knowledge management company. We've had this large SharePoint practice, and that's evolving now to include Teams and Azure migration. So, the center of that data is moving into the cloud, into cheaper storage, and we're helping make that data more accessible to teams. And again, we've always been a business intelligence company. We've done Cognos and business objects in the past, but our company is evolving into more AI data science and using tools like Power BI that are powerful and already integrate with your data. We just talked about the difference between waterfall and agile DevOps. So how are we different? We've always been able to help your companies create very informed decisions with the most relevant data. We're helping companies improve their automation capabilities. And really, one of the things I just talked about is we help teams work together, just help those internal teams work better together across silos and also with your customer. We've been guiding teams on the ability to reduce their technical debt And one of our huge strengths, I think, is our governance. We're helping bring a governance model into tools like the Power Platform, helping understand how to license it, how to deploy it, how to train people, which way to look at this problem before you get started. So some of the ways we think that both the Power Platform and Collective Intelligence can help your organization are across, these particular problem spaces. Number one, budget. We're going to show you that you can get a lot out of the base license you have with Microsoft 365. So if you already have Teams, if you already have Office, you can do a lot of these sorts of deployments and projects with an existing license. We talked about the lack of availability of time and resources with the rapid development model of with a Microsoft 365 platform. We think that can reduce the overall time and number of needed resources to develop a new application or new process. And again, business expectations are going up. They want things more accessible, they want things more mobile, and they want things now. And this sort of platform, Microsoft Power Platform, can help implement those needed business pieces of functionality and meet their needs where they are. Legacy maintenance is also an issue. I've read some statistics that legacy maintenance of the existing infrastructure is costing businesses between 40 and 60% of their IT budgets. That's a lot of money spent. We think these tools can help alleviate that, or at least not overall impact the legacy budget. And because you can manage the Power Platform from the center, security and compliance is much easier to implement from a Microsoft 365 platform than bringing in some new tools or developing something new. And we're going to show you through some connectors and other tools that you can leverage much of your existing infrastructure and bring it into the Microsoft 365 platform so you can continue to leverage that existing technology investment. And personally, I still see companies still have these manual processes and these paper-based processes. And I think this is what a digital transformation can help your company with. That should reduce the overall footprints of your process and shorten those production timeframes. So what are the advantages? Number one, you already own the Microsoft 365 platform. So there's a lot to be potentially saved in terms of investment on products and processes in that platform. Your data is already there, at least in some form or fashion, at least your email, probably your file shares, and if you have other SQL databases, you probably have a lot more. In talking to our customer base, there's a lot of customers who are moving to reduce their tools and their infrastructure products to simplify them and reduce that legacy overhead. Microsoft being what it is, we very much expect it's going to be one of the winners in that consolidation. And then I think Microsoft's always been strong in their overall platform communication and interoperability. The tools just work great together. And we're going to show you some of the ways the connectors work so that you can not only work within the platform, but you can bring data in from other platforms very easily to make strong business decisions. So with that, I'm going to bring in Richard Krott, my other partner, who is one of our architects focused on the Microsoft Power Platform. Richard, I'll turn it over to you.
I wanted to get together today to give our opinion and our thoughts on the Power Platform and the ways in which we think that people get the most out of what they already own, given the use rights that Microsoft provides them with through their other products. It's a very broad topic, so I felt this is a good place to get started. And we're looking to produce more content along the way to complement this and expand upon it. My name is Richard Krott. I'm a managing partner with Collective Intelligence. I am 24 consulting years old, and I've been with the company since its inception. I've spent most of that time doing application database management, data management and analytics, business intelligence, administration, and configurations of various platform services. What that's given me is a very broad base of experience in a variety of technologies and different customer environments. And what that does is allow us to apply the right amount of complexity needed to do the job based on the individual needs of our customers. We were doing low code before it was a buzzword. I was primarily building. I spent the last decade or so building a lot of lightweight SharePoint solutions that were user maintainable, use modern complementary development approaches such as Bootstrap and React, as well as doing it in a manner that could survive upgrades when you went to upgrade your farm. And that's where I think the Power Platform fits in very nicely. The fact that it is complementary to the services on which it sits on top of or beside, and really suits the way we've been doing things and delivering projects for customers. Where safe, agile methodology allows us to use these suite of tools to quickly analyze, act, and automate various business needs, and do so in a very quick 2-week cycle to provide immediate return on investment. So you're not waiting months or years to see the fruits of your labors using a more classic development approach. Now, the Power Platform is an fully end-to-end low-code environment. So that means we can build a complete, robust solution in all of these, through all these different tools, from start to finish. Doing very little heavy lifting meaning writing a lot of deep code, just basically configuring services, security, and some smattering of lightweight expressions here and there. Now, the platform consists of various tentpole applications and services, such as Power BI for business intelligence, Power Apps for traditional application user interface development, Power Automate for workflow orchestration and notifications, and virtual agents that allow you to build more chat-based interfaces that you would find with something like Microsoft Teams. But then doesn't just stop there. It has a very wide variety of add-ons that you can throw in there to help supercharge and accentuate what you're trying to build. Things like data connectors to virtually every service you can think of. You can build your own custom connectors as well. So anything you might want to for specific custom needs. AI Builder is an expansion that lets you build configure pre-built language models and document processing models to alleviate a lot of heavy lifting for day-to-day workers, such as scraping information off of forms, language translation, sentiment analysis, taking action based off of it. And the Dataverse is a Azure SQL-based data store that's fully integrated into the Power Platform to manage storage, so you have nothing to worry about from a server or database management mechanism. And the costs can be managed a variety of ways through individual Power Platform licenses, as well as independent specific storage licensing that you might need to purchase. So all of this allows for a lot of flexibility and powerful solutioning. But if it's not enough, you can take that even further and integrate with Microsoft's Azure platform, amongst others. You could go to other platforms as well, depending upon what services you're leveraging. But this is one thing we like about the Microsoft platform, that it does work really well together as a full ecosystem. You've got the Azure DevOps to help with work and code management. All of the things that I just mentioned are pipelinable through that using source code control and other scripted techniques. You've got the ability to integrate with the more powerful Azure AI components and machine learning in the back end, as well as anything else you can dream up on the back end. So it really allows you to build very robust IT enterprise-wide solutions, and then also sit front-end edge case citizen developer solutions as well. So it really suits every developer in the organization. So some high-level takeaways is that the Microsoft Power Platform provides some great runway building capabilities where you can set the stage for all those developers to get the job done that they need, and doing so in a way that is compliant with the organization's needs and policies. These are very self-documenting tools. So not only are they visual and easy to look at and understand, but you are able to label things and comment on things in place so that it's easy to leave documentation behind while you build it for the next person to help maintain it. Mobile ready out of the box, able to, anything I build in Power Apps is immediately translatable or available on a tablet or phone format. Being able to scale out, as we just saw with Azure, taking it to other service layers to do more advanced things. And we think this is a really good tool for bridging to your legacy technology. So if you have a lot of on-premises solutions that variety of backends or old applications, is a great way to extend that and integrate into that and bring them into the future. Now, one thing to do with these tools is connect to a bunch of data sources. Well, one of your biggest sources of data is your 365 environment itself. Now, the 365 environment is comprised of multiple services, and these services are bundled together into different user experiences. That modularity is very powerful for delivering very rapid, functional, iterative solutions. So I'm able to, if I understand how to use SharePoint and manage files, I can easily build on additional file complexity and automation, very small pieces at a time, to continue to build out as I go. So the users are never waiting very long to get to a point where they can do something of value. The other benefit is that these are all familiar services that most users are already using today. So if I'm asking someone to use a shared calendar, they know how to use Outlook, and they're in there and they're able to interface with my application with usually very little education and training on how to use the actual tools. I also find this picture very valuable because it helps you understand that, Microsoft Teams is not a monolith. It is a collection of services that are brought together to allow your teams to collaborate with a modern chat-based interface on the front end, threaded discussion, and things like that. Other applications that can snap into it. So for the licensing, all these platforms, these different aspects of the Power Platform, are licensed in very similar ways. You have a all-you-can-eat per user license that is usually the most expensive per user. That's going to let them build as many apps or flows as they want or as they need, and also consume them as well. So if I build an application, I'm able to share it with other people in my organization if they're licensed per user. We also have the ability to, if you're not doing wide scale rollout and have that many solutions to put forth, you might want to go with the per app licensing, which allows you to license per application per environment. So if I had 2 users using an application in 2 different environments, I would need 4 per app licenses to satisfy that. But now that is usually a much cheaper dollar amount per app, and is a great way to kind of dip your toe in and get going, get acclimated before you need to really fully scale up. Pay as you go. So if you've used anything with Azure, you'll know that this basically integrates with Azure subscriptions to allow you to build an application that has very unpredictable usability, or maybe it's only used once a year, but you're never quite sure who's going to need it when. You can do pay as you go, and then it only will charge you when it is consumed or used. And then finally, use rights, which is really what we're here to focus on today. This is the inherent capabilities that other Microsoft licenses provide you. So for instance, Microsoft 365 allows you to do things with Power Apps and Power Automate that complement that license. So for instance, I'm going to build an Power Apps form on top of my SharePoint list to make it more interesting and advanced. Or I want to create a workflow that will move my attachments from my email into a SharePoint library that I can then share with my team. That's all part of the license and what you do as part of that license. And you can use these tools to automate a lot of your day-to-day tasks. Now, I also say licensing, it is very flexible, which it can be intimidating or confusing. And that's why I think it's very important to talk about that up front, because not only does it matter for your budget, but it also will impact potentially how you design or implement your solutions. So if you're not just rolling out for all users, and you're doing strategic application development for the enterprise, you want to know kind of who the users are, and quantify that so you can then optimize your licensing strategy, because you might use a blend of these approaches. It's not necessarily a single choice every time. Now, combined with that is also the Microsoft 365 platform in general, which provide all the underpinning technologies to build that runway, right? So the Azure Active Directory for all of your user management, security, authentication, authorization, and then compliance centers for doing data loss prevention, making sure data that is sensitive does not leave your environment. If it does, you can take various actions on it, right? Notifications to freezing it to whatever you want to do. Our platform has some also specific aspects of this baked in. So there's specific policies that you can apply to the Power Platform to enable citizen developers, and just keep your developers in line with your policies, such as certain connectors. I might not want them working together. Like, I don't want you to be able to read from our financial system and then immediately send out tweets. So maybe I don't want you tweeting all financial information out of my system. So you can prevent interactions between connectors. You can prevent certain features of connectors from working. So for instance, again, with a Twitter connector, I might want to let people use that connector to read tweets, but not to actual post content to Twitter. We're going to talk about a few case studies today along these lines. So simple to enterprise, the first two are focused on those use rights of the licensing. This is all stuff you can do with your Microsoft 365 license today. And I'm going to jump right into the issue tracking tool, which should be very familiar to most users. This is essentially something that you've been doing in SharePoint or other CMS platforms for decades. I mean, who knows, a long time. Basically a help desk, right? We want to be able to report issues and take action, track them, take action on them, and quantify them. So we were able to come in and work with an educational client that was attempting to work with 13 different locations, and they had a very short timeline and a small budget to roll out to these 13 locations, and they needed to keep track of issues as they went along, and they didn't have time or money to work with a larger enterprise level solution, help desk solution. So we suggested to them that they use the Microsoft 365 platform to do this with a little bit of Power Platform automation to kind of stitch it all together into a unified solution. So we're able to configure those services according to that design and develop the connective tissue between using Power Platform, and then make sure and do the handoff for both support and user adoption at the end. So what this is comprised of is various levels and various pieces of those Microsoft 365 services. For data management, we're using SharePoint. It's a very simple, straightforward issue tracking template that Microsoft provides. It's great. You can also roll your own. Power Apps for doing the user interface uplift for a little bit additional enhanced functionality and layout branding. Power Automate to orchestrate all the different actions that are taking place and provide notification to the users of the system. Planner for managing tasks related to these issues that are being reported. And then Power BI along with Planner to do some additional reporting and visualization of the information for different audiences. So the ultimate outcome of this was that what we estimate would have taken 2 months using traditional development methods such as .NET. We were able to turn around in 2 weeks. And we were able to minimize training and adoption costs due to the familiarity of the users with the tools already. Able to immediately get them up and running with collecting issues even before we had all the connective tissue in place. The increased visibility of what was happening by being able to track things end to end, along with user communication on these different issues. And then, but it also provided them the means of having a hub for this rollout, so they could promote and publish things about their milestones, events, and kind of a general newsletter of how they were doing and what people should expect. We did all this with their existing licensing, because they were already licensed for Microsoft 365. Now I'm going to demonstrate that now. We've built a similar solution in our demo environment to leverage those use rights to deliver that. And this would be something we would consider a citizen development type effort, right? Any user could be able to bring this together. Bear with me, switching screens here. All right, so we see I have 3 tabbed windows down here. These are actually 3 different profiles. I have my persona, which is the developer. I have the manager user, which is in the middle tab, and I have an end user on the far right. So as the manager, I've got a demo team, and we support users throughout our organization, and we want to make sure that they are having a good time, minimizing issues. So I created a channel within my team for tracking issues, and I'm able to do my normal Teams-based activities here, threaded discussion, files for support of knowledge transfer and training. And then we also have the ability to pin in other resources from the services, such as SharePoint. We have the issue tracker list available to the end user, and it will show we're able to pin the SharePoint list to the team into a separate tab, so we can see and work with the list without having to swivel chair to another tab or browser application. And I can see all the issues that have been reported, and there's quite a few here. And then there's also an issue tracking tasks tab, which is pointing at our team planner, which is also associated specifically with this channel. And this is where I'll be tracking and managing my team activities around these issues. So in order to get started, I'm going to go and act as the end user. And you'll see the end user does not have any membership or affiliation with the demo team. So the teams, they're just a normal collective intelligence user. And the beauty of using these tools is that I'm able to leverage their inherent capabilities, such as with SharePoint. I can share the SharePoint site independently from how it interacts with the team. So in this case, I'm able to look at my SharePoint application and see that I have access to my demo group, and I want to report an issue as a demo supported user. If I click on the issue tracker from the website, I'm going to see a list of items that is much smaller than the one that the manager was using. So these are only the items that I have reported, and we're using the inherent capabilities of SharePoint to do that. I can click the new button. I'm presented with the Power Apps enhanced SharePoint form. And this has our custom branding, as well as some quality of life improvements, such as the priority being preset to normal, the user is preset to the current user, and I'm also able to specify a delegated user. So if Charles wanted me to report an issue on his behalf, I could. But for today, I'm going to go ahead with the demo user. And we also have the current date pre-selected. So let's call this demo issue 100. Testing. Save that. So when we save that, it's going to Power Automate is going to trigger off of that behavior, and it's going to take some actions, right? We're going to notify people that someone submitted an issue. We're going to tell the user that issue has been received, and we're going to create a task for the internal team to then work this issue kind of behind the scenes, right? And then also be accountable for getting that work done. Now, this may take a few moments when you have not used the solution in some time, so it may take up to 5 minutes in some cases, but we should see something here momentarily. There we go. Now we see that we've received a notification from Sagir. Now, Sagir is the developer who developed this demo, and this is something that can be completely flexibly changed. We can create a service account to deliver that information, or as you see here, the author of the flow by default will be the one who is sending the message. So we see the ticket's been submitted, and we get a link to conveniently navigate back to that item from our email. And I see that I also have a comments panel that's available, and this is something that's inherent to the SharePoint list as well. So you're getting that communication around that issue without having to do anything else. It just comes along for the ride. This can be disabled, and this is something separate. This is something specific to the list, not related to the standard Teams-based communication. Now, if I go back to the manager, the support person's going to be supporting this user. I can see they've also received an email that issue's been created. They're also able to go look at it. And we see a bit more information on this one. We can see some assigned to, some backend escalation information and so forth. We also have a button at the bottom for opening the planner task. And so you can now conveniently take us to the planner task from the item, which the task also has a link back to the item. So everything's cross-referenced and easy to navigate. This task is something should look very familiar to you, standard to-do list type fields. It does have some nice features such as a smaller sub checklist. So if you have multiple steps required to resolve this issue, you can keep track of them and manage them. And there's also the ability to add a running list of comments so you can communicate your status to your managers or whoever else is helping to support this to see if something's blocked or if something is just to see where something stands. There's also custom labeling available, color-coded, and we're able to assign this to anybody on our team, but I can also just take ownership of it myself. So assign it to myself, and then I'm go about my way. Now, the other nice thing about these planner tasks is that Microsoft has a full to-do ecosystem that is available via the To-Do app through Outlook and so forth. And all of these tasks will be orchestrated and collected together, and you're able to to work on them and close them from anywhere you are. So you don't have to do this right from this interface. But for now, I'm going to just close this from the planner interface. So I've done my work, the issue is resolved. I'm going to close the ticket. And then that's going to trigger another activity to pick up and update the list item, as well as notify all parties that the work has been completed. Now we can see that our end user has been notified that the issue has been resolved and completed. And on our issue tracker list, we can see that the status has been completed and the assigned to information has been updated onto the list item. So a lot of possibilities here for synchronizing and managing data across these different services and for different audiences. Now, we also want to we want to be able to track our progress on how successful we're being with these tasks and these plans. So the planner itself has some inherent burn down charting capabilities. This allows you to see quantifications around by staff member, by status, or priority, as well as custom buckets. So you have these ability to create custom buckets, Kanban style, within your interface. But now if I want to take this further and I want to have a different user that might need to communicate to management, or they want an executive dashboard or a way of handling and a different perspective on this data, we are able to satisfy that requirement as well using Power BI. Now, if I use my customer care link, that's going to take me to a Power BI report we've composed in Power BI Desktop, and we published to my workspace. So again, using the free inherent capabilities of the freely available features. And from here, I can see a quick dashboard in a different way of quantifying all these issues, and see who is our biggest issue submitter, how are those distributed across our staff members, and then able to break it down by priority. Now, as a project manager, I might be interested in making sure things are moving along effectively, efficiently. So I'm going to click on the critical visualization, and notice that 4 of those have been blocked. So I have critical items that are being blocked and they're not able to move forward. So from here, I'm going to drill through into my escalation report. And this is going to use a Power Apps visual to allow us to directly interact with that SharePoint list data in real time in relation to our data analytics. So here I can see I'm looking at my critical blocked items. And if I pick one of these that's not escalated, you can see that it's filtered down into that item. And I'm able to use the pencil to edit and escalate. And I can even add a specialist, such as Charles, and then I can submit that information. That's going to update directly into the list. So now I'm able to do that quickly and react without having, again, to swivel chair between different tabs and pages. Just get the job done right in the moment and continue on my day. Now, digging into some of the details behind the scenes, let's take a look at our form information. So our default SharePoint list form will typically look something like this. Using the standard out of the box issue tracker list, it's just going to be stacked one on top of another. All the columns are just in one line. Fairly standard. Utilitarian, gets the job done, kind of boring. Doesn't really give us any additional functionality. Now, there are some JSON-based no-code solutions you can do. Still have to understand JSON's a little bit of a customization understanding there, but you're able to do some customizations on these lists without going all the way to Power Apps, but that's a video for another day. For now, we're going to look at the issue tracker and customize the form settings for that list. Now, you can get there a couple different ways. You can go from the issue tracker, open up any form, new or edit, and then from the ellipsis menu, customize the Power Apps, or you can go in through the list settings the same way you would have in years past with previous technologies, under list settings, form settings, and then you're able to modify that form right from that page as well. This is going to open up the Power Apps development environment. And it's going to show us our current version of our form. And I say current version because you may be worried about, managing, changes, inadvertent changes, mistakes, whatever. This has version history just like other documents throughout the system. So you'll be able to see which version is the live published version versus any drafts that are in progress, and then who's responsible for those. You're able to roll. You can also restore backwards, just like you would with any other SharePoint content. Now, this interface is designed to be very, what you see is what you get. You got some navigators on the left here across various things, such as the structure of your application, the data sources involved. In this case, we have a single SharePoint list data source, and able to bring in other resources such as custom images and videos, content, and so forth. That's what you see is what you get. You're able to click around, see where you have focus, drag and drop to make things bigger, smaller, change color, and so forth. If you click on an item, you'll see a properties panel on the right, and that's going to give you all the information that you have available to you in that panel. And you'll also notice that there are you're able to put in code or expressions. It's a very lightweight code, very similar to if you've ever done Excel formulas, probably equivalent to something of that complexity. And this allows you to do different behaviors. So in this case, this issue requested by, this is pre-populating that field with the current user. Now there's a chunk of code here in the default value area, and I don't know what this means, right? So Sagir wrote this. I'm not positive what it does, so I'm able to copy that. And one thing that's coming coming very shortly, you probably heard of, is Copilot. That is Microsoft's relationship with ChatGPT, and they are making that available. As you can see here in my interface, I have a preview of that feature. One of the nice things I can do is things like this. I can take that code and I can pop open Copilot and ask it, what does this code do? And then paste in the code, and it's going to give me some information about that code. So it's going to tell me that it is setting the issue, getting the user function to access the full name and email, yada, yada. So it's going to give me some background for what it can tell, but you can also ask it how to do other things, such as how do I change the color of a rectangle? That didn't work. Damn it. I can ask Copilot how to get started. And that'll give, so it does a lot of documentation searches for you, as well as some deeper things. Now, I've had better luck personally going directly to ChatGPT, so I'm expecting this to evolve and become very competent at doing code authoring assistance as you go. But finally, I wanted to dive into the Power Automate flow. One of the flows that we use will take action when an item is submitted by an end user. So we have a flow named issue tracker item created. And when we look in here, we're going to see some details about what the flow is, who owns it, previous runs. You're able to see all the detail of any previous runs and all the values within all those activities. Very useful for debugging and also learning about what a flow is doing. So if it's something I've inherited, then another way for me to kind of dig in and see what is happening. Once I open up the flow and edit in the editor, I'm going to see that this is very highly visual, color-coded connectors with arrows pointing for behavior. And if I have the ability to comment, just like you would see inside of Office per activity, as well as the ability to add traditional code comments. So, and also the human readable naming conventions. So a lot of flexibility here for doing that self-documentation, really helping out your fellow citizen developers or other IT developers coming in behind you. And we have the ability to create blocks of code, so blocks of activities that can be labeled as such for different purposes, and then kind of getting it out of our way. It's very nice for that. Otherwise, these can become quite long and unwieldy to kind of parse through and see what's happening. Now, this allows us to isolate, but it also allows us to then clone and duplicate, move it around. So if I want to do the same thing multiple times for different situations, I could copy that as a whole. So I don't have to set up multiple activities multiple times. I can just copy it and then customize as needed. If we look at one of these activities, you're going to see a bunch of different preset fields. So in this case, we're creating a planner task. It gives me all the available potential fields that could be set for that activity. And then we also have some ability to put in custom code. So here we can see a mix of static text and programmatic values. Those are coming from previous steps in our flow. And you'll see a content editor kind of pop out here on the side. This editor is good, it's functional, it's not great for editing. As you can see, it's only a single line of visibility, so it can be quite difficult to do more complex expressions in here. I usually use an external editor, but I know in preview right now is a much more robust editor coming for this feature, so stay tuned for that. And I would also expect to see Copilot integrated into this product as well once it becomes available to help you do, again, mainly with expressions. And I'm assuming eventually it should be able to produce entire flows as starting points, I would imagine. Now, what I've shown you today was just a starting point, just the tip of the iceberg. There's still many, many things you can do with Microsoft 365 use rights. And there are some limitations here. So some limitations are, expectations wise, this is going to take longer than you expect. When you get into this, whether you know how to develop or not, it's gonna take you a little bit longer to kind of understand how to put it together correctly and efficiently, and repeat it over and over again, because it's more of a declarative language and not so much a programmatic language, and so it's a little bit different from what most people might be used to. But that being said, don't let that discourage you. It is very effective and scalable. Just have to get over that initial learning curve. I'm going to turn it back over to Charles, who's going to go over the 3 remaining use cases and continuing to escalate in complexity.
Thank you, Rich. It's good stuff. Thank you for walking us through that, Richard. So after that demo, what we want to do is show, we've got 3 other use cases here, and each one kind of ramps up in complexity. And, what I think Rich showed was maybe a starting point for a Power Platform application. But we can expand upon it. So we had this customer who was a retail client, and they wanted to improve their overall product development pipeline. So this customer was focused on, they had a product development lifecycle window. And during that window, what they were seeing was if they missed their either 30-day or 60-day window, they would miss their market opportunity. They were losing money for every day past their launch cycle that went beyond the 30-day or the 60-day window, depending on the product. The reason for that, it was their process for a product launch passed through many different hands. So they would have a partner that did, some supply chain things, the product materials. They would work with the marketing team to develop a launch strategy. There was a packaging team that wrapped the product. There was the warehousing team that would store it and distribute it. All of those teams need to work together in unison, and each of them had their own tasks that executed at a given time. This team was managing that through Excel files, through emails, through ad hoc meetings. And what they were finding was the person who had the ball was not always clear. Some of the issue tracking documents were the wrong version, or had the wrong update, or didn't have the right information. There was no visibility, no clear visibility. So what we did with this company was help with the following goals that we've got here. So we helped them secure a centralized collaboration space using the Power Platform. We created a single point of knowledge tracking. So where was each product in its life cycle? Who had the ball? What needed to be escalated? What was on track and what is behind? We work with them to automate many of these business processes that allow them to move from one step in that process to another. We added a bunch of notifications through every single layer of this process. So when one team completed their task, it immediately and correctly notified the next team in the process. And if anything was falling behind or getting close to a risk, this solution would escalate. So what was our role in this overall solution? First of all, we worked closely with the business to define the different processes and design something using Power Platform componentry. We provided the overall configuration of teams to do this and with SharePoint to manage some of the documents that they had. And we also developed the overall workflows using the Power Automate tools. And then finally, from an adoption standpoint, we help guide the business users using the new tool, and we help with overall knowledge transfer. So what was the solution? Similar to what Rich showed, we use a SharePoint list to track each product in its life cycle. It was a simple management construct, and people are already familiar with SharePoint in this organization. They had some interesting document management requirements. So like suppliers needed documents in a certain format. Their marketing team and their product development team needed documents in a certain format. They're using the templating that was already inherent to the Microsoft platform to accomplish this. An interesting part of this is each product had its somewhat own life cycle. It went through its own steps. So we didn't want the business to have to write code or manage code. What they could do at the initiation of each product, we helped them build this configuration management process that allowed them to select the correct steps in the process that were needed for each product. So if they needed a supplier, they needed to work particularly with a warehousing team, or they needed to work with a marketing team or someone in the product development, they could configure that upfront and ensure that those steps were accounted for. So that variation was built into the process. We created a triggering whenever an event was completed to allow the next person in the chain to know it was their turn. And then we used Power Automate to stitch all of this together to track each event, the status of each product. And this is all visually seen in one single source of truth. And that was a huge advantage of this overall process for the team. So what's the before and after in this situation? All these disjointed communications went away. Is this the right version? Who's got the ball? We had a single source of truth, as I just managed. This is a very time-sensitive process, and when they missed their deadlines, that company lost money. So at the outcome of this, they had very, very tight time tracking. With the configuration management, all these process deadlines that were negotiated at the beginning of a launch of a new product amongst all the team members could just be built into the configuration and clearly understood visually by the team. And instead of tracking work in progress via spreadsheets, we had this single source of truth, as I mentioned. And the overall big bottom line here is that the product acceptance, which took 30 to 60 days or more, and when it went more, there was a negative impact on the business. We got the new product acceptance down to 10 days or less. Let's see here. The next use case I'd like to go over is something we're calling the claim revenue recovery solution. And there was a healthcare client that we helped with this particular solution. So this product was for a healthcare client, and they were dealing with claim revenue recovery. So they had a couple different customers that would send them documents, CSVs and whatnot via FTP and email that were Excel files. And they had a data validation team that would take this information. It would compare it against the existing data they had already received from it, track to see if these payments had come in or if there was new payments. And they would, fill in the blanks on this data, organize the data, do ETL processes, and then pass a brand new spreadsheet to the data analysis team. Now, this is the team of specialists that would actually do the business process of recovering the revenue for their healthcare clients. The challenge here is they would take the spreadsheet, and the management of this team would have to break it up across all the different specialists on the team, of which there's almost 20. So we'd create 20 different little sub spreadsheets. Each person on the team would work through their part of the work, and the managers would stitch it all back together into, final output. From there was like a second management process, which would create this report from the customer. So it would look at the data, look at the progress of the team, and like on a weekly, daily basis, make these custom reports for the customer to view. This is like very manual process. Had a lot of opportunity for making errors. Although the team was very diligent and had processes, there's just a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong, version mismatches, miscommunication, whatnot. The last part of the process was this agent report that they had to look for things that were like beyond the window. And there was a separate kind of workflow that, the team had to jump on when these claims aged to a certain point. So what were the goals of this? I'm going to call it a digital transformation. Number one, we wanted to reduce the time and effort, instead of managing spreadsheets. They really wanted to be focusing on the business process. They wanted to migrate off this legacy platform, more manual solution, I'm going to call it. The staff was very bogged down in some of these tasks and processes, so they wanted to save some time for other activities and they'd be able to bring on new customers and clients. Even though they kept this history of Excel files, the auditability and history was a little bit difficult to parse and put together. And they wanted to improve the overall consistency and the quality of the outcomes. So let's see here. Laser pointer here. This is the design of the solution that we came up with. And this one I would call is a little more enterprise. So it was not just a Power Platform, but also some of the Azure tools that we use. And this is the flow of information in the target system and the system we help them build. So they would get these files from their customers, which they would FTP to a server that was hosted in the Azure cloud. There was a logic application that we built within Azure to automatically store this file. So if there was ever like a confusion on what the customer sent, we immediately made a backup of it. From there, we built this data factory processor that would translate the information and normalize it, automatically parse it, and put it into a SQL database that was hosted in the cloud, much cheaper storage there. And once it was there, it was, we had transactionality. We could look across sends from last week, last month, last year. We finally built and this was basically, it was now staged at this point. So once that was done, one of our strategies here was to only pull in the information into the Dataverse that was needed for, just in time work. So we didn't want to pull in this entire history of data because Dataverse data is a little more expensive. So we built this logic app that would pull in just the stuff they were working on into the Dataverse. We built a Power App custom application for the team of specialists. And this, we talked about how the managers were having to distribute these Excel files. As information flowed into the Dataverse, it would automatically distribute these claims into the individual queues of the specialists. So there wasn't anything manual that the managers had to do to divide up the work. The specialists automatically had a queue just for them, and they could pick up the work of others as needed. And these screens had the correct filtering, searching tools. Everything was distributed in a way that they could see the entire list. And then when they need to drill in to do the work of an individual claim, they had the right organization and layout for them to do their work. One of the major benefits here is that once this claim specialist had completed, we built these Power BI reports on top of the solution, and the manager could simply push a few buttons and get the client report that they needed without having to pull together spreadsheets or mess with columns or worry about versioning. It was pretty much at a push of a button. So what were the benefits? Number one, we're really proud of this product because by our math, we saved this company close to $500,000 annually. The savings really came from this reduction in labor overhead. The team reported that we saved each member of the team, which was nearly 20 people, 2 to 3 hours per person. So we greatly reduced our overhead. We minimized the overall processes to require, and it made it, the next big success here is it improved the overall data quality. We had transactional processing from beginning to end. We're able to search and filter at every stage of the process. We could see a history of claims. If we wanted to compare one run to another, we could. And a little feature that I didn't really mention before is we improved their contact list, which helped them do escalations and get to the right person in a much quicker and faster way. There's much better security throughout this process because we were able to build role-based security into the events. Where there was PII data, we're able to mask that appropriately and keep the people who are not able to see HIPAA kind of data out of the process easily. And because this is now in the cloud, we could scale this up much easier. The team was better able to bring on new clients, and it was just a matter of adding a new processor and distributing those claims to the new people on the team. And our final use case here, again, was for a healthcare client. This was a claim transfer review process. So again, this was somewhat of a three-phase process. And on this process, there was a lot more upfront work that was being done by this data client support team. So in this particular process, this firm was handling customer data across many different hospitals. They had, I think, like over 25 or 30 different feeds that were coming in on a regular basis, and each of these feeds had its own format. So there was a team of a couple people that were looking on a weekly, monthly basis at these files that were coming in, doing transformations, doing lookups, doing somewhat manual ETL processes, and then creating this spreadsheet again for the team of claims specialists. And similar to the other solution, there was like a manager distributing this work across a team. Once that, we got the file from each different hospital, he's like, hey, the hospital is going to go from one specialist to another. And then again, they were reporting this output using Excel files. So they would have to look at what a specialist did for each hospital, build that information back together, and distribute it back to the hospital, which was their customer. So because this changed hands so much, because there was so much manual processing, again, this was potentially an error-prone process for that team. What were the challenges? Number one, there was this mixture of SaaS, manual processing, and they were making these callouts to APIs that were hand-driven. And we initially got involved to help automate some of those API processing. This is passing through many different hands. Each hospital would have this pre-processing of data, the actual claim processing, the value add that this business brought to the process, and then the manager getting involved to do adjustments and then build a final report and solution to the customer. There wasn't very, very little automation in any of these processes. A lot of the communication and the handoffs were done through email, done through share files, and there was just, again, this loss of potential data because it was so Excel based, and they had these challenges of manually copying and merging the data back together, which they had run into issues here and there. And they basically lack some advanced analytics throughout the process. There's really no trending data. They couldn't see, what was the difference between one hospital and another, where were they making money or where were they losing money. So what were the goals? We want to improve the overall claim processing of the data, add as much automation as possible. We want to improve the accessibility and the reporting. Where possible, again, we had this upfront goal of modernizing. So we wanted to use these low code, no code tools where possible, like our platform. The data security was very important to this team. And one of the big deals here is they don't want to mix any of the hospital data together. So we needed a pipeline for each different hospital, which could be standardized. And they wanted to plan for growth. One of the challenges here is they wanted to add more hospitals, but just the way the team was working, they needed to get like 2 or 3 hospitals from a customer standpoint to justify hiring a couple other people to the team. So they wanted this to add more automation. They want to be able to make this more turnkey to add new tools and new customers to the process. So they wanted to modernize the platform and make it scalable. And then, we talked about Agile up front. This is one of the customers where we help bring some of these Agile processes to their organization. We want to improve the culture and the processes. So we work closely with the team to do these Agile development techniques. We had regular iterations, regular demos. We work to deliver value beginning, middle, and end of the process. So I'm just going to break down our solution into a couple different parts here. So again, on the upfront part, we use SharePoint as a place to house the data. So as the data would come in, each customer had their own individual share. And the team, our customer was able to manage that and seeing which files showed up for which customer in a SharePoint list. So it gave them kind of a dashboard to track which files had come in and what state they were in. Once a file had arrived via SharePoint and showed up at the lists, there was a review process. And we automated as much of this as possible. So a reviewer basically confirmed that there was an ingestion that occurred. When that occurred, automatically there was a Azure Logic app that we built that would ingest this data into the system. And for each hospital in the process, we would initially store this data in a blob storage container, which was cheap. And we built a custom Azure Data Factory processor for that given hospital, because each hospital sent something a little different. Again, there was this overall master store of data. This was secured by hospitals. So there wasn't any kind of intermingling of data. And the reviewer, we had built this Power BI app, which would check the output of each and every hospital data, because they were potentially more failable. They had to go back and forth to hospitals here and there because they may have sent poor data, or they may have changed their format from one run to another. This report gave nearly real-time evaluation of what happened when this automated process would ingest the data sent from the hospital. And this reviewer then could immediately follow up with the hospital and make the correct corrections quickly. Once that was all done and everyone felt comfortable, there was a reviewer that could basically hit go and then stage the data. So once again, this data is staged, there was a processor which would say, okay, that stage data now can move into the Dataverse. And we built a Power application for their claims specialists. Again, that these claims specialists were organized by groups of hospitals they were able to support, and we were able to, through role-based security, prevent one set of specialists from seeing the PHI data or even the claim data at all for the hospitals they weren't meant to see. There was built-in dashboards and reporting right in the Power app, which I'll show you a quick screenshot of here. And then the manager could see Power BI reports, which would show them the progress of the team, would show if any particular hospital was behind or needed more help. And then they were able to push a few buttons and get a Power BI report to share with the hospital on the overall success of the process. This is just an example of one of the screens from this solution. So you can see we had built into some reporting, and these are some features of the Power Platform that come out of the box. You can get group things, and this basically showed which hospitals were behind and needed the most help. A couple of these had a 9,000, and the list here in the middle basically was the list of claims that needed to be processed and managed. So, what were the benefits here? Number one, this is a much more efficient process for this business. In order to process a hospital file, it would take over a week, and the process now moved to 1 to 2 days instead. They were able to, basically it was 100 or 200 claims versus per day versus thousands. And there, at the end state here, there are 30% fewer people involved, mostly on the front end, because we built all these custom processors that automated the data ingestion process. We use these visual business rules all the way through, particularly on the Azure Data Factory side. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but you can see the way it processes through a series of, kind of like a flow chart looking process. And you can see the way the data is mapped in a visual way. We improved the security from the very beginning. We had data encryption everywhere throughout the process, from when a file arrived all the way to when reporting went back to the customer. And we, as much as we could, we limited the customization of this particular platform. We used a model-driven application. It was sort of these master detail views. So that way, as Microsoft updates these platforms, they should be upgrade proof as things advance. And this solution is much more scalable. And the data centralization was had a bunch of advantages for this customer. So they had much better reporting because they could look across the different hospitals, they could look across the different trends over time, had much better auditability. So as changes happened to the claims, there was a history of everything that occurred. And then much better communication on the team. They could see who owned which set of claims, who owned which set of hospitals, where was it in terms of the data aggregation and ingestion, and where were things in terms of reporting back to the customer. So to overall wrap up our presentation today, a couple of the themes I just want to reiterate here. Number one, and particularly in these last couple of examples I showed you, I feel like the Power Platform is a great tool that can span both your legacy workloads, and incorporate in older data that may be in legacy system, as well as merge it with your cloud workloads. So you may have some data in the cloud and some data on-prem, and you've got a business process that spans it. I think the platform is a great tool for that. We think that development pace is much more increased and much more visually documented, leading to better agile processes. We think that the Microsoft 365 user interface paradigms help ease overall user adoption. And again, if you're migrating to this platform as a main business driver for you, you have fewer tools to manage and secure. And we really liked it from the team empowerment standpoint. You can work across different departments and silos within your organization, yet everyone's like a shared citizen. These single viewpoints that allow everyone in the team to come into and understand we're powerful for our customers. And again, another key place where we think this fits is these cross-functional workloads, just very prime candidates for deploying these particular tools. So we did a Q&A and we did this live. Take your comments to email and chat if you've got any questions. If you go to collectiveintelligence.com, you can find some information about our Power Platform consulting products, and you can find that again at collectiveintelligence.com. And feel free to reach out. You met Richard Krot, he did the demo. I'm Charles Nordine. John Schrock's our Director of Business Development. And you can find us either via our email or via LinkedIn. And thanks everyone for watching.